Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It all started innocently enough. My wife, Julia, went on a girls' trip to Las Vegas with her friends. Harmless fun, right? At least that's what I thought. Julia and I had been married for 8 years, and we had 2 wonderful kids, Kate and Noah. We had a rhythm to our life, a predictability that I found comforting. When she came back from her week in Vegas, I was eager to hear all about it. "How was Vegas?" I asked as soon as she walked through the door, her suitcase rolling behind her. "It was fun," she said, smiling faintly. "You know, the usual, shopping, shows, and too much wine." She leaned in to give me a quick hug, but something felt off. I couldn't put my finger on it at the time, so I brushed it off as exhaustion from traveling. In the days following her return, I started noticing subtle changes. Julia seemed quieter, distracted. She'd often be glued to her phone, smiling at messages she didn't share. I chalked it up to her catching up with friends about the trip, but a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. As the weeks passed, her behavior shifted even more noticeably. Julia, who was always affectionate and cheerful, became distant. Our usual conversations turned into brief exchanges, and intimacy vanished completely. One morning when I leaned in to kiss her, she turned her head away. "Not now, Alex, I'm just tired," she said with a sigh. "Tired again?" I asked, trying to keep my tone gentle. "Julia, you've been tired for weeks. Are you sure everything's okay?" Her reaction caught me off guard. She snapped, "Why do you always have to make a big deal out of everything? Can't I just have a moment to myself?" The sharpness in her voice stung. Julia rarely raised her voice at me, and this felt so unlike her that it left me reeling. Later that day, while Julia was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text popped up. "Hope you're feeling better today." My heart skipped a beat. The sender's name wasn't saved, just a number. I stared at the screen, debating whether to check it. It buzzed again. "Let me know if you want to talk. I'm here for you." Something was off. My instincts screamed at me, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Instead, I waited until later that night. "Who's texting you?" I asked when we were lying in bed. She froze. "What do you mean?" "Your phone buzzed earlier. Someone said they're here for you. Who is it?" "Oh, that's just Stacy. She's been checking in on me since the trip. I told her I wasn't feeling well," she said too quickly. I wanted to believe her, but her tone was unconvincing. The next morning, Julia left early, saying she was meeting her friends for brunch. Her mood seemed lighter than it had been in weeks, but something in my gut felt off. After she left, curiosity gnawed at me. Without thinking much about it, I decided to follow her. I kept a safe distance as I drove behind her car, my hands gripping the wheel tightly. Instead of heading toward the cafe where she claimed her friends would be, she took a turn that led to the medical district. My heart sank when I saw her park in front of a clinic. I watched from a distance as she walked in, clutching her purse. "What's going on, Julia?" I muttered to myself. "Why are you at a clinic? If it was a health issue, she would have told me, wouldn't she?" But she tried to hide it. Something must be going on. The unease I'd been feeling for weeks now surged into full-blown suspicion. For nearly an hour, I sat there in my car, replaying every strange behavior from the past few weeks. When she finally emerged, she didn't seem to notice me as she hurried to her car and drove away. I followed her home but didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I waited for her to leave the house again later that afternoon. She mentioned she had a yoga class, and I watched her drive off wearing workout clothes and carrying only her gym bag. With her purse left behind on the counter, I couldn't shake the need for answers. My guilt clawed at me as I picked it up and opened it, my hands trembling. In one of the side compartments, I found a folded piece of paper. My heart pounded as I unfolded it and read the words at the top. A bill from a clinic for an STD panel test. The date of the test? Just 2 days ago. My stomach churned. Why would Julia need an STD test? My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was she sick? Did she suspect me of something? Or was there another explanation, one I didn't want to consider? I shoved the paper into my pocket, my fingers shaky. The unease that had been simmering for weeks boiled over into full-blown panic. Something was very, very wrong. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I confronted her. "Julia, we need to talk." "What is it now?" she said, clearly annoyed. I held up the bill, unfolding it in front of her. Why did you get tested for an STD? Her face went pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I wasn't feeling great after the trip, she said, avoiding my eyes. I thought it was a good idea to rule out any health concerns. Health concerns? I asked, frowning. What kind of concerns, Julia? Why didn't you tell me about this? I didn't think it was a big deal, she said quickly, her voice shaky. I didn't want to worry you over nothing. Nothing? I repeated, my voice rising slightly. You don't just randomly decide to get an STD test, Julia. What's really going on? She looked away, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Finally, her composure cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she whispered, It wasn't supposed to happen. It was a mistake. What was a mistake? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. At the club, there was a guy. He was just part of the entertainment. He flirted, and I was drunk. My friends egged me on, saying it was harmless fun. One thing led to another. You cheated on me, I said, the words tasting like poison. With a stranger in Vegas? It was just one time, she whispered. I regretted it the moment it happened. I stared at her, struggling to process the betrayal. And now you're telling me you might have brought an STD into our marriage? She didn't respond. Her tears were answer enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I left the house and drove aimlessly. My thoughts were a storm, and one question loomed above the rest. Was this marriage worth saving? The next day, I did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called her best friend, Lisa. Lisa, I need to know what happened in Vegas, I said bluntly. There was a long pause. Alex, I don't think it's my place. Julia cheated on me. I already know. I just need the truth. Lisa sighed. It wasn't just one guy, Alex. The whole trip was wild. There were multiple guys. Julia, she got carried away. Her words hit me like a freight train. Multiple guys? This wasn't a momentary lapse of judgment. It was a pattern of betrayal. When I finally returned home, Julia was waiting for me. Where have you been? She asked nervously. I talked to Lisa, I said. Her face fell. She told me everything. Julia's shoulders slumped and her voice faltered. I didn't mean to hurt you, Alex. I don't know what came over me. Multiple guys, Julia, I said, my voice trembling with anger. How could you do this to us? To me? To our kids? Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, I felt nothing. You've destroyed everything we built, I said coldly. For what? A week in Vegas. Was it worth it? Julia's face crumpled as she stared at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. I got the test results, Alex, she whispered. I'm positive. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The room seemed to spin around me as the weight of it settled in. Positive, I couldn't believe it. You're disgusting, I spat. You cheated on me and now you've got an STD. I guess that's the punishment for what you did. Her sobs grew louder, but I shook my head, cutting her off. I'm done, Julia. Alex, please. No, I said, my voice final, sharp. I don't want to hear another word. We're over. That night, I packed a small bag and drove to my parents' house. The moment I walked through their door, my mother stopped mid-step, her eyes scanning my face. Alex, what's wrong? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I sighed and sank into the couch, burying my face in my hands. It's Julia, I began. She betrayed me, betrayed us. My mother sat beside me, her hand on my arm. What do you mean? Alex, talk to me. I lifted my head, my voice cracking as I recounted everything. The trip, the lies, the clinic bill, and finally what Lisa had revealed about Julia's infidelity. With each word, my father's jaw tightened. He sat in his chair, arms crossed, his silence speaking volumes. When I finished, my mother was crying quietly. Oh, Alex, she whispered. I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. I can't do this anymore, I said firmly, though my voice wavered. And I can't let her be around Kate and Noah after what she's done. So what are you going to do? You're taking the kids? My father finally spoke, his voice low and measured. Yes, I said. I'm taking them and I'm leaving. I don't know where yet, but somewhere far from here. They don't deserve to be in the middle of this mess. My mother hesitated, glancing at my father. Are you sure this is the best way? It's such a big step, Alex. She destroyed everything, Mom. I can't trust her anymore, and I won't risk her behavior affecting the kids. My father nodded grimly. If this is what you feel is right, then do it. But be careful, Alex. This isn't going to be easy. The next morning, I transferred every last penny from our joint account into my personal account. I couldn't stomach the idea of her having access to a single cent of my money after everything that had happened. After the betrayal, after what she'd done to me and our family, she didn't deserve any of it. Then, I put my plan into action. I knew Julia would be at work, and she always picked up the kids straight after finishing her shift, so I decided to get ahead of everything. My heart raced with each passing minute, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on me. I could feel the pressure building, but there was no turning back now. I had to keep moving forward for Kate and Noah's sake. I arrived at Kate and Noah's school an hour and a half before pickup time. The school grounds were quiet as I walked through the entrance. I made my way directly to their classroom. When the door opened, their faces lit up in surprise. Their excitement was palpable as they saw me standing there. "Daddy!" Kate called, her voice filled with excitement. "What are you doing here?" "We're going on a little adventure," I said, trying to smile, but it felt forced. "Just the three of us." Noah looked puzzled, but smiled nonetheless. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise," I replied, taking their hands and leading them out of the school grounds. I could see their enthusiasm, and I hated that they had no idea what was really going on. As we walked out of the school, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to turn our lives upside down. But it was the only choice left. We drove back to the house, the weight of what I was doing heavy on my chest. I moved quickly, packing their clothes, their favorite toys, and whatever else they needed. The more I packed, the more certain I became that I couldn't let Julia's betrayal go unpunished. Once everything was packed, I took one last look around the house we had built together, the one I'd once thought of as a home. I closed the door behind me and drove away, my mind racing. Later, as school was letting out, my phone buzzed with a flood of messages from Julia. "Where are the kids? I just went to pick them up from school and they weren't there. They told me you came and picked them up earlier. What's going on?" I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of her words. The panic in her messages was clear, but it didn't faze me. "Alex, please, what's happening? Where are they?" I didn't reply right away. I knew she was probably frantic, but I couldn't bring myself to engage with her. Another message came through. "I need to talk to you. This isn't right. Why would you take them without telling me?" I ignored it, but she kept calling, over and over, her persistence relentless. As we drove out of town, her number flashed across my screen again. I pulled off the highway into a quiet rest stop. The kids were content in the back seat, and I didn't want them to hear the argument that was coming. So I got out of the car. I took a deep breath, and I answered. "Alex, where are the kids? I just went to the school, and they're not there. They told me you picked them up early. What is going on?" I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "They're with me, Julia." "What do you mean, they're with you? Where are they?" Her voice cracked, a mixture of confusion and anger seeping through. "We're not coming back," I said flatly. "Alex, this isn't funny. I need to see them. They're my kids, too." "You gave that up when you destroyed our family, Julia," I snapped. "Do you think I want my children around someone who betrayed their father? Who lied and broke everything we built?" "Please, Alex," she begged, tears audible in her voice. "Don't take them from me. Don't do this. You know how much I love them. You didn't think about them when you were screwing around in Vegas, did you? I'm doing what I have to do to protect them. I won't let your choices ruin their lives." "Alex—" "Goodbye, Julia," I interrupted, hanging up and turning off the phone, the weight of the decision still heavy on my shoulders. I wasn't sure where we were going yet, maybe another state, maybe another country. But one thing was clear. I wasn't going back to the place where everything had shattered. In the days that followed, I decided to take an STD test as well, just to be safe. We hadn't shared any intimate moments since she came back from the trip, only a few kisses, but I needed the reassurance. Thankfully, the results came back negative. Still, the relief did little to dull the pain of her betrayal. Nothing could undo what Julia had done. For now, I was focused on keeping Kate and Noah safe and rebuilding their lives away from the chaos Julia had caused. We had left the life we knew behind, and a small part of me still wondered if things would ever feel right again. But I couldn't look back. Not now. Not after everything that had happened. Thank you for watching.